All right, here we go. Week 1 starts now. All right, Drew. How we feeling on the Saturday after cut down day? All rosters are now final. All teams are down to 53 men. The League of Legends has completed their own draft. We're inching closer and closer to the first game of the season. But before we get started, why don't we go over our draft results and compare how we think teams did.
Absolutely. Sean, thank you for allowing me to sit in with you here. I'm coming to you live from our Medford studios on 173 Fulton Street for potentially one of the last times here. As we all know, Sean will be moving on to bigger and better things in Framingham, Massachusetts. But what we wanted to do in the interim is bring you up to speed on who we thought the best and worst selections were in this year's League of Legends draft. So, Sean, would you like to kick it off with your first team?
Yes, I'll kick it off, and I'll kick it off with you, Drew. How about that?
Excellent.
We'll kick it off with each other, okay? How about that?
Okay, sure.
So, to start off, I'm going to go with the pick that I think was Drew's worst, and I'm going to go with Danny Woodhead, who was in the 6th round. All right, I think Woodhead was your worst pick because he went pretty early in the 6th round. That's someone that's going to fall into your flex spot. He's going to be a backup running back. We know 3rd down, but I think that's pretty early for a guy that you might be rotating in and out of your starting lineup.
Okay, so that's my worst pick.
Indeed.
So who was my best pick?
For your best pick, I'm going to go with Jeremy Macklin in round 5. I think he's a very underrated receiver. He's the #1 option in Kansas City. He had an excellent year last year. I think just round 5, that's a very good value for you.
Okay, return of the Jeremy Macklin.
Yes.
So I will start with Mr. Sean Doolin. I'm going to start with his best selection. And for me, for Sean's best selection, I'm going to go with Russell Wilson, round 8.
Like that.
Excellent value. I know Sean was not necessarily looking to take a quarterback at that point in the draft, but someone like Russell Wilson was on the board. He's going to have a great year. He's got a lot of new weapons out there in Seattle, and I think he's in line for a very strong season. So I like the Russell Wilson selection in round 8. In regards to his worst selection of the draft, I'm going to take
There are no bad selections.
LaShawn McCoy, who was taken in round 4.
Okay.
Injury prone. We don't really know what we're going to expect out of the Buffalo offense this year. Not a guy that I traditionally like in Buffalo, but that for me is my worst selection in the draft. I thought there were other guys on the board at that point in time that Sean could have taken that would have accelerated his team, has taken it to the limit, taken it to the Lamar, if you will.
Certainly not. Certainly not.
It was a couple minutes from the ditch.
All right, moving on to Dennis. All right, Dennis's worst pick. Dennis had a very strange strategy going with many tight ends. Out of all those tight end selections, I'm going with Martellus Bennett in round 12. I believe it was the 3rd tight end he had taken in a row. So I don't know what his thoughts are with that. Can't play all of those guys, and certainly people aren't going to be trading for those guys either, knowing that he just has an excess of all those players. However, I think Dennis's best pick was actually a tight end, taking Jimmy Graham in round, I believe, 11, either 10 or 11. I think Jimmy Graham, a former 2nd round pick as early as last year, I think he's in for a rebound year, and I think he'll be the clear-cut starter for Dennis, and getting him around 12 would be really great.
So I'm going to go with Bud's team here as we continue down the League of Legends here. I'm going to go with his best pick of the draft as another tight end. We're going to stay at the tight end position. We're going to go with Julius Thomas, who was taken in round 10 by Bud. Very questionable draft overall for Bud as you look back at it its totality. But when you look at the Julius Thomas pick in the 10th round, I love that selection.
I think
that he's developed a rapport, if you will, with with
Gabbert.
Yes.
Bortles.
Bortles. Blake Bortles, yes.
It's been a long day on the porch here in Medford.
Yes. Yes, with Blake Bortles in Jacksonville. I think he's in line for a lot of targets this year. I think he's going to be in line for some touchdowns as well.
Jacksonville, very hot team this year.
Hot team, good offense, a lot of young players, but Julius Thomas is one of those veteran guys, knows how to get open, knows how to find the end zone, particularly in the red zone. So I'm going to go with him. The worst selection that I have on Bud's team, honestly, myriad selections that you could choose from here.
Everyone after round 8.
Pretty much. Now, if you think back of Bud's team, Bud was keeping Aaron Rodgers this year as a quarterback. Okay,
Solid.
Good value
Very
there.
strong value.
which made it even more abundantly unclear as to why he selected Carson Palmer in round 6 of the draft this
very
year.
Early.
Very odd selection there. I know his philosophy is that he's going to try to trade Carson Palmer. Who are the takers out there?
We have some smart people in this league.
Who are the takers out there for a quarterback?
Stockpiling in all these positions, people realize that, hey, just leave him stuck on your bench.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to get good value for that.
Didn't make sense to me in regards to taking Carson Palmer there. I think there were other needs and holes to fill on his roster. So Carson Palmer there did not make sense to me when you already have Aaron Rodgers there at your disposal as your starting quarterback. Just doesn't make sense. This is not a 2-quarterback league, as far as I know, as far as the rules go.
Have fun with him riding your bench for the whole season.
To me, he's just a good starter that's sitting on the bench, and there's really no use for him in the lineup. So for me, that was Bud's worst selection.
I'll definitely let him take up that spot on your bench.
Absolutely.
Don't worry. Same thing for you, Dennis, with all your tight ends.
Let's keep him moving here. Let's go with Cam's team. I'm going to go with Cam, who had a very strong season last year.
Runner-up.
Excuse me. Had a very strong season. Best selection that I saw on Cam's roster this year was wide receiver Tyler Lockett. I'm going to stay with the Seahawks. We already talked a little bit about Russell Wilson, his maturation process, if you will, if you may. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver, in my opinion, is the #1 wide receiver on that Seattle team. I think he's in line for a big year. He's a younger player, very quick off the ball. I think he's in line for a lot of targets, a lot of receptions this year, and I think he's going to have a strong year.
They say him and Russell Wilson have quite the chemistry.
I like Tyler Lockett. It was a guy that I had established as a guy that I was interested in. Cam was able to sneak in and take him in round 5.
Cam has really blossomed as a manager in this league, I have to say.
Now, I'm going to go with the worst selection because when I looked at Cam's roster, I noticed he only had 1 tight end on his roster. But we're staying with the tight end teams. Dennis took all the tight ends, so obviously it's a trickle-down effect, and then Cam is one of those guys
I myself only have 1.
Maybe Cam and Dennis can facilitate some trade conversations.
Let's hook up. They should hook up.
I don't know what just happened. I blacked out. So the worst selection I had on Cam's team is actually Eric Ebron, who was taken in round 12. Now, I like Eric Ebron this year for the Detroit Lions offense. They have a new offensive coordinator. I think Stafford's actually in line for a bounce-back year. However, Eric Ebron had a big injury scare in the preseason. He left one of the games early. He's already had a lot of injury problems over his career, in his very brief career. So I'm concerned about him. If he's the only tight end on my roster, I'm a little concerned that he's not going to be able to stick it out for the entire season. The fact that Cam waited until the 12th round to get a tight end, a little concerning for me as well. So that's why I'm going to put him in my worst draft pick selection, based on what I'm seeing with the rest of the league and in its totality with Cam's roster.
Okay. All right, and I got to move it over to Adam. All right, Adam, so a team that really looking for a spark this year. Obviously, he's been at near the bottom of the league for the past few. So I'm going to start off on a positive note with Adam. I think Adam's best pick by far was Corey Coleman of the Cleveland Browns. Nice. He picked him up in the 12th round.
Sneaky.
So Coleman is going to be the Browns' #1 wide receiver for, at minimum, the first 4 weeks until Josh Gordon gets back. Cleveland still looking to be a very poor team, probably going to be throwing the ball a lot, trying to be coming from behind through most of the season. So obviously those receivers are going to be very valuable. Coleman was, I believe, a first-round pick this past year, and he's had a really good training camp. So picking him up in the 12th round, I think he's going to be at minimum a wide receiver 3 for Adam, possibly a wide receiver 1 or 2. So great pickup in the 12th round.
Definitely. A lot of guys are targeting him right now.
Yes. Now going to Adam's worst pick, you could say probably not his fault because of some injuries that happened this season, but I'm going to go with Stephon Diggs in round 7. The Vikings receiving corps has really had a lot of question marks from year to year. It seems like every year there's some other guy that's kind of been hyped up and then fallen off the map. So I was expecting Diggs to be that next guy who had a couple really strong weeks last year and then fell off the face of the earth. So taking him in the 7th round I thought was a risk just off the bat with how he performed at the end of last season. But then, not Adam's fault, but with the injury to Teddy Bridgewater, he's really probably looking to struggle this year. They have traded for Sam Bradford, but I'm still not a fan of Sam Bradford. So, best of luck for Stephon Diggs.
Yes.
They still have a myriad carousel of other receivers that they could possibly use. So, Diggs going that early, You know, you're looking for him to be at least a wide receiver 3. You might get that on certain weeks and certain matchups, but he might be more of like a flex guy during bye weeks. So not a strong pick for Adam there. Now moving on to Bill. Bill looking to get back into the playoffs. He's been a really strong performer in this league, but last year kind of had a dip, it seemed. So Bill, I'm going to go with his best pick would be Drew Brees in round 7. That's a very strong value for Drew Brees. He's consistently been a top 5 quarterback in fantasy pretty much over the last decade. So to get him in round 7, very, very strong. He'll be a guy that he can play every single week regardless of matchup and not have to worry about the position. Probably wouldn't have to worry about carrying a backup either. So that's a very strong selection in round 7.
A lot of new weapons this year for the New Orleans
A lot of new
Saints
weapons.
offense. It's not the same offense that it's been in the past few years. It's a completely different system that they have going over there.
Yeah, they've kind of revamped their whole offense,
Yep.
their whole offensive roster. You know, you got Mark Ingram, a lot of new receivers.
Yep. Snead, Thomas.
Fleener from Indianapolis coming over. So, you know, a lot of promise for that Saints offense. Then I'm going to go with Bill's worst pick. And I'm going to go with our own Steven Gostkowski. He went in round 10.
Ooh, that's early.
Round 10, that's very early. I know Gostkowski's been one of the best kickers in fantasy over the past couple of years, and he'll probably have a lot of opportunities with Garoppolo starting the first four weeks of the season. But in round 10, kickers just aren't that valuable in fantasy. You can pick up anybody pretty much off the waiver wire, and you know, you don't even know what to expect. You could get 3 points, you could get 12 points. You don't know, even when out of the best kickers. So to go in round 10, where you're still looking for guys that you're going to be starting, you know, throughout the season. You know, you're looking for your top, 1, 2, 3 bench spots during round 10. So taking a kicker there, you know, you can wait for sure at least 4 more rounds to get a good kicker there. So I don't know what the thinking was there.
So I'm going with Dave's team now is the next team that we're going to look at. For my best selection on Dave's roster, I'm going to take Dante Moncrief, wide receiver, Indianapolis Colts, who was taken in the 5th round. I'm expecting big things out of Moncrief this year. I think he actually has better fantasy value than T.Y. Hilton. And that's saying something. I think T.Y. Hilton has been a prominent wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts for a number of years now. But for me, Moncrief is the up-and-coming guy. He's more of a consistent guy. T.Y. Hilton, to me, is a little bit more of a home run hitter.
Great name, by the way.
Go with Moncrief.
Yes.
As the more durable, as more reliable. I think he's the guy to have in the Indianapolis wide receiver core. So I like the selection there with Dave in the round 5. I think he's got tremendous, tremendous value this year. Worst selection on Dave's roster. When you look at it, it's a guy in any other system, he would flourish. You put him in the Patriot system, he would flourish. He would flourish in the Saints system, for example. But when you listen to where he's playing, he's got tremendous value. Travis Kelce, tight end, Kansas City Chiefs. Tremendous physical strength. Now,
Mini Gronk.
I understand that he had 800 yards receiving last year for the Chiefs. But if you look at the Chiefs roster, and you look at the way he was used last year, to me, I felt like there was much to be desired. I think there's more for Travis Kelce out there.
Why don't they go to him more?
I just don't. I don't
that's a
think
huge question
he's
mark.
in the system that's going to maximize his abilities. And I think for me, that hinders his fantasy value. So I don't like Travis Kelce in round 6.
When you play with a quarterback that can only throw it 10 yards,
right?
That's not
and you would
very
think
helpful.
that would be a perfect system for him because he's a short over the middle, whatever. For me, I just don't see the Chiefs utilizing him to the best of his abilities. So for me, in a round 6 selection, I need more consistency there. I know Dave later on in the draft did get Delaney Walker, who I do like, but 6th round, Travis Kelce, not for me. It's just not my cup of tea.
He's not in that elk that he was with Gronkowski and Graham, 2 years ago.
Right.
He had that big coming out party, breaking out season when he was a top 2-3 tight end, and he's just not that. That's not what he is.
Not. He should be. There's no reason why he shouldn't be.
Yes.
But he's unfortunately in that system. To me, it's a guy that I don't love in the round 6. That's a good round to draft. I don't love that selection. Let's go to the next team. I'm going to go with Steve DeFerrari's team. Very impressed with Steve's draft as a whole. So I'm going to go with his best selection in the second round, staying consistent with the tight end position. Rob Gronkowski was selected in the second round. I like that selection.
Having him fall there, that's
I
strong.
like that selection. He already had Allen Robinson in the third round as a keeper, who I love this year. Rob Gronkowski, PPR machine, particularly with Jimmy Garoppolo running the show for the first 4 weeks of the season. Should see a lot of targets. Should see a lot of red zone opportunities, as we know. For me, obviously, provided he stays healthy, he's a guy. He's the premier player at that position. To get him in the second round is tremendous, tremendous value. So I'm going to go with that as my best selection for Steve's draft. Worst selection, again, very difficult. I actually liked what Steve did a lot in this draft. Worst selection for me, though, C.J. Anderson was taken in round 5.
Okay.
I don't love the selection.
Wasn't he on your team last year?
He was, and I actually traded
Anderson?
him to Steve.
Okay.
So Steve obviously was happy with the trade and the return because he has both guys.
Him back. Bring him back.
He has Alshon Jeffrey and C.J. Anderson this year, both the guys that were involved in that trade last year. So C.J. Anderson was selected in round 5. I don't like the player, to be honest with you. I know that the Broncos have talked about trading Ronnie Hillman. That has not happened as of this taping. However, I don't think he's going to give you the max fantasy value that you need out of the second running back position. And that's where Steve's going to be slotting him in. He was selected in round 5, as I mentioned. If you look at Sean's team, Sean has some running backs there on the bench that could be starters that were taken after round 5. So for me, it was about when it was selected. I don't necessarily love the player, but it's more about when the player was selected. And that for me was round 5. I don't like C.J. Anderson personally. I'm tired of his act, personally.
High hopes for C.J. Anderson last season.
So for me, that's
a top 5 pick last year.
That's why I'm putting him in the worst category. But again, I liked what Steve did overall in the draft.
Yes, Steve in this league has been very Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes,
I would say I think that's a good way.
I did not like his last 2 drafts, but this year was much better.
Very strong.
Good job,
yeah,
Steve.
He won the league one year, lost it the next. Yep. Has been very up and down. So hopefully Steve will be looking to switch it up, kind of pull a Boston Red Sox, if you will. Go from worst to first. Hopefully he's not going, back into the basement. And I will finish it up now with our defending champion Ryan. I'm gonna go. Ryan's worst pick, I believe, would be Willie Snead taken in round 8. So I know we talked about the Saints offense, a lot of potential for that there, but with the Saints offense, they also have many options. Drew Brees has always distributed the ball well, always spread it around. So Willie Snead, I don't know if I can trust him to take him that early. I feel like a lot of the Saints options are options you would be looking for a little bit later, kind of after around 10 possibly, just because you don't know game to game who's going to be the target. Kind of like how the New England Patriots are. You don't know, is it going to be a Julian Edelman day, an Amendola day, a Gronkowski day, a running day where they hand it off 40 times. So to take Willie Snead there in that round, I think you're not going to be able to trust him to start week in and week out. For Ryan's best pick is someone who was on my sleeper board, who I love. I know Adam loves him because he's a former Alabama running back, and that would be Derrick Henry, who went in round 12. He's had a lot of highlight rushes this preseason. He is a mammoth of a man. He's about 6'4", 240 pounds, can also move, can run for a big guy. I think he, at some point this season, is going to take the starting role from DeMarco Murray. Tennessee Titans is a team who are definitely going to be running the ball this season. Their head coach has said as much. They're probably going to be kind of the next version of Rex Ryan's, smash mouth run football team. So I think Derrick Henry's really going to fit into that system. Really loved him in college. Love the skill set that he offers. So getting him in around 12, I think he's going to be an excellent pick.
Okay, so there you have it. That is the draft recap as we see it here. What do you think? Let's hear your feedback throughout the season. Signing off here from our studios here in Medford, Massachusetts. We look forward to the action starting on Thursday
night. Get those lineups set.
With a rematch of the Super Bowl with the Carolina Panthers traveling to the Denver Broncos. John, thank you for doing with me.
Thank you very much, Drew.
It's been a pleasure. Hey, we'll see you out there in week 1. Good luck.
See you, gentlemen.